What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video, and today we're taking a look at the Brass Band Soloists library from Fracture Sounds, which is a brand new library and their first commercial legato library. So a lot of us might know Fracture Sounds from their amazing piano libraries, which I have quite a few of here, as you can see. The Spotlight piano being my favorite. It's a very intimate grand piano. They also have Homestead and Midnight, which are also really, really nice. But I've always wanted to see legato libraries from Fracture Sounds because their piano stuff is just so great, and stuff that I can practically use on a regular basis, more importantly. And so when they sent me this library to take a look at, I was instantly intrigued. They have a legato approach video on their channel that they kind of break down their approach for recording this library, and it's sort of the science behind it, which is pretty cool. And also, of course, a walkthrough for the library to understand the different patches and what goes into this library. So without further ado, let's kind of take a look at this. Basically, it's a solo series of 5 different instruments, and the legato really is the main focus here. We have recordings for both vibrato sustains and non-vibrato sustains, all with legato, of course. And then you have the regular sustain polyphonic patches for those long notes. You also have regular staccato, tenuto short, tenuto long, and performance shorts, which are basically triggered by velocity. So the lighter you play, the shorter the notes, the harder you play, the longer the notes, triggering between these 3 types of shorts, very, very similar to how Cinesamples did their Cinesymphony series. So with that being said, let's kind of go in order here. I'm going to start with the cornet, then we'll go through the soprano cornet and so on and so forth, but let's hear the articulations first for the solo cornet here. Right, so there we go. That's the sound out of the box. So you can see here the mid mic has basically been pushed all the way up, and the close and far are sort of providing the detail and the atmosphere of the room, respectively. And if you just prefer a single slider, then you have the perspective slider, which you can, push left to right to sort of influence the sound to your liking. But that's basically the sound of the cornet, and you can see how beautiful it really is. The other thing I want to bring to your attention really quickly is the legato settings here. So I think the main thing that Fracture Sounds was focusing on is trying to have the engine predict the note that you're going to play in terms of the velocity, the length, the sort of articulation, whatever it might be. It sort of anticipates what you're going to play, and therefore there introduces a little bit of delay, but it results in a more realistic performance, and the legato transitions are more musical as a result. Whereas if you use classic mode, then you have very little delay, but then again, the transitions might not sound quite as musical. So if you watch their whole walkthrough video, that's something that they sort of stress. But yeah, in overall, I would probably leave smart mode on the entire time because I just want the most realistic and musical performances possible. Let's move on here to the solo soprano cornet here. So it goes a little bit higher than the regular one, the first patch. Let's have a listen. All right. So I think having a set of like vibrato samples and non-vibrato samples recorded separately is a really good idea because there's a lot of times maybe you're building a melodic phrase where you only want vibrato on the last note of the phrase. So maybe you start your phrase with a non-vibrato set of samples, but then the very last note you want that vibrato to come through. So you can key switch between these articulations like traditional sample libraries, which is kind of cool. Right? You notice how only on the last note I key switched to the vibrato legato, so I activated vibrato on that final note only. The other thing I want to bring up is that it seems like when I play legato lighter on the keyboard, like with a lighter velocity, the transitions blend together a lot easier and there's a lot less delay. Whereas if I play the legato a little bit harder with more velocity, then the transitions are a bit more pronounced. So if you want to play runs, for example, if you want to play a little faster, then you actually want to play lighter on the keyboard as you play those fast notes. So for example, if I played with harder velocity on a run, it would sound like this. Right? You can hear it's sort of struggling a little bit to keep up, but if I play a little lighter, it feels like to me the samples trigger a little bit faster and the notes are able to blend together a little bit easier. So that's sort of a cool little thing that I discovered while playing through this library. Let's hear the Flugel horn, okay? So let's have a listen here to legato. Beautiful. And let's hear the tenor horn now. And finally, let's hear the euphonium. There we go. So I seriously am not exaggerating when I say that these are some of the best legato samples that I've heard in a brass library. And there's a reason I put it right under Cinematic Studio Brass. Number one, it's red, so it's consistent. Number two, the legato quality is on par with CSB. And I really like this aesthetic as well. It's a lot closer, and you can tell it has a soloistic context in mind. Whereas with CSB, yes, the solo instruments are perfectly serviceable in solo context, but I do feel like they are a bit more situated back in the hall, right? So they serve really well for ensemble purposes. But these ones, you can tell they've been mic'd up a little bit closer, at least in the way they've done the mic mixes and just the overall impression I'm getting from the library. Now, I think the logical next step would be to flesh out the rest of the orchestra. Yes, that's very traditional, and yes, it's been done countless times. But again, I'm a sucker for traditional sampling techniques, and this library, I think, has captured a little bit of magic. And I can't say that about every library I review, honestly. So if they took this, applied them to woodwinds, applied them to the regular brass orchestra, and of course strings, I think we've got something special in our hands. Because one of the libraries I'm using right now at the time of this recording for my Christmas album is their Blueprint Festive Bells. And if they could apply this to a set of like strings with sort of a smaller section size, chamber in nature, lots of detailed vibrato, and a sort of a romantic sound that I haven't really seen captured quite yet, I could see that being a big hit for me, at least. I would love that sort of thing. But I do think that their first entry into, commercial legato is sort of a brass band. It's filling a hole in the market that hasn't really covered too many of these instruments in depth. But yeah, I personally would love to see more of a venture into the traditional orchestral sampling instruments, because I think those would sell like hotcakes. People can never pass up a good orchestral library with legato. So count me in for sure. But yeah, that's a first look at this library. So really enjoy it, and I could definitely see myself using it for melodic lines or phrases that need these sort of instruments. And I'm not afraid to expose these instruments in an isolated mix, because the legato is just that smooth and just that good. But of course, you can always adjust the latency of the legato. Again, you can always switch to classic mode and adjust the speed there. But I do think the sound that you get out of the box and the performance is quite musical and very usable off the bat. So there we go. And if you want to check out my full composing process, you want to see how I kind of go from the initial idea all the way to the polished final mix and master, I'd like to give you free access to my workshop called the Complete Composing Framework, or Complete Composers Framework, sorry. And it literally goes through step by step how I approach making music from start to finish. So you'll see what I think about when I come up with ideas, how I arrange and produce music, how I orchestrate, how I mix and master. I want to take you through that entire process and give it to you absolutely free as a gift for watching this video, and just to say thank you for your support on this channel throughout the years. I really do appreciate it. And you can find that down below in the description box if you want to grab that anytime. But again, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.